Good morning, everyone. What a wonderful day to be alive to attend seminars again at camp meeting. Uh, our planners have done an excellent job in planning topics that are really important. Yesterday, we started with intimacy in marriage, a topic that was obviously of great interest and great importance to our members. So we are thankful for that. Today's seminar lineup is excellent. We have 5 seminars in the morning, 5 in the afternoon. Let me give you the 5 in the morning. As you look at this list, you're like, which one do I choose? Which one do I attend? But they will be available afterwards so that you can watch what you have not been able to attend. So the first one is financial freedom. The first one that I'm listing here, financial freedom seminar with Dr. Carlos Biaggi. The 3 principles of financial freedom will start today, and then he'll continue with subjects from there. After that, evangelism in the digital age. This pandemic has kind of doubled the importance of that topic. So evangelism in the digital age, we'll have a number of speakers, some from the television ministry. It is written. Yves Monnier will be the first speaker. And then Tentmaking, taking your job to the next level. Pastor Byard Parks from the Middle East Union will be speaking about how to make our job a conduit for sharing the gospel. Mental health and well-being in the church is another important seminar. And then we will also have from our general conference, family life directors, again, continuing this important topic from yesterday, intimacy in marriage. So as you can see, there are a number of things that are really, really important. There is also a youth seminar. The speaker is Paul Charles, and he will be sharing with us. So, sharing with the young people. So, again, there's a youth seminar. Resilient Faith is part 1, and it will continue on from there. Financial Freedom is another seminar. Evangelism in the Digital Age by It Is Written, the television ministry based in North America. Tentmaking, taking your job to the next level by Pastor Byard Parks. Mental health and well-being in the church. And then the Olivers from the General Conference will be sharing with us some very important information on intimacy in marriage. We trust that you will be blessed today as you listen, as you take part in the seminars, as you ask questions, and may God bless you and bless us all as we grow through these seminars that have been planned for us. Have a good day.
And then in the afternoon, the topic of budgeting and the importance of budgeting, and finally, the credit or saving is a wiser decision in terms of acquiring some things that we need for our families. So let's start. Let me here start my presentation. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. All right. So we have until around the seminar, correct? And I will finish earlier so we can leave time for questions and answers, correct?
Yes, Doctor, go ahead and.
All right. Okay, give me a second that somehow my PowerPoint was in the last slide, not the first one. Okay, let's go. In the Bible and in the spirit of prophecy, especially in the book Counsels on Stewardship, we can find many principles of financial freedom, but today I want to summarize those principles into 3 that will be easy for us to remember, actually live in our family or personal finances. But let me start by introducing a few questions that can be a starting point. I believe that this seminar is very important for people who are fighting to financially survive. Maybe some of you are saying, oh, my salary, my income is not enough to reach the end of the month. And maybe you are asking yourself, does the Bible, does God really teach us principle of financial freedom? Principle that will help me to actually reach successfully every month and even thrive financially? Then this seminar is for you. Maybe you are thinking, is there really a connection, a relationship between my spirituality, my relationship with God, and my financial freedom? Maybe you are actually asking, if I put God first in my life, in all areas of my life, how can I put God first also in my finances? Please mute your microphones so your room noise doesn't come here into the meeting. Then later when you want to ask questions, you can open your microphones. Thank you. So maybe you are thinking, oh, this is something that I need to study, to learn later in my life. But in reality, the sooner we learn what God intends for our finances, for our financial stability and growth, is something that cuts across all ages. And we, from very young age, we can even teach our children this simple principle. Word of God. We know that we are stewards. The Bible says that we are stewards or managers or administrators of God's resources. And I want to just give a very simple framework for how you can think of your stewardship. And I like to think of this in terms of 4 T's, in which the first one is our time. One very important thing that we manage in our lives is our time. God gave us these 24 hours. How can we put God first in these 24 hours? And here we can think about personal devotion with God. what I have learned in my life is that I need to put God first in my day by spending the first hour of my day with Jesus, by in prayer and in studying His Word. And also, week He makes 1/7. The seventh day, 1/7 of all our time belongs to God. It's actually more than our time. If you think that God asked us for 10% of our income, of our money, God is asking for more of our time, because it's 1/7 instead of 1/10. Another area of our life that we are stewards is our bodies. And I use the word temple because I want to have 4 T's here on the screen. Our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. We need to manage our temple in a way that will honor God, that will bring glory to His name. And here we can talk about, for example, the 8 natural remedies and how to use these natural remedies to be strong, and Spirit can dwell in our minds and in our, now with COVID-19, it's more even important and relevant that we keep these natural 8 natural remedies. Another area of our lives that we need to be faithful stewards is in the use of our talents, that skills, those things that we are good at, like, for example, helping people, or singing, or drawing, or writing, or being a good listener to listen to people, etc. Whatever it is that is the skill, the talent that God gave us, we need to be a faithful steward. But also God gave us a 4th T. We have time, we have temple, we have talents, and the last one is treasures. And by treasures, I mean all the physical, non-physical materials that we have in lives, money, resources, our houses and our land and our environment. These are treasures that God places in our hands, and that we need to be found also faithful stewards. And we are going to focus on this seminar throughout this day in these 4 sessions in the 4th T of the treasures. How can we be found faithful administrators, faithful managers, faithful stewards of the money, the finances that God places in our hands? So I want to tell you that God is our creator. This is nothing new. The Bible says that God created us and supplies for all our needs. He's the one giving us life. He's the one giving us health, talents, time. With our time, we work, and with our work, we earn money. So money is earned with our life that we receive from God. Therefore, work and life belong to whom? It belongs to the one who is providing to us. And so the question I want to ask you for us to reflect as we start is, how much of my salary does it belong to God? How much of my salary belong to God? What do you think? Anybody? I want this to be interactive. You can open your microphone and answer here. Are we really owners of our salary? Are we free to do as with it? Or is it really something that belongs to God, and I am just His manager? Is there any financial requirement from God so I can be found a faithful manager? These are the 3 principles that I'm going to share with you. These are very simple, basic principles, but has a profound implication in our finances when we really believe them, when we really receive them in our lives, and we implement them as we manage our finances. The first one in the purple piece of the cake is God is the owner. The second one in red, God provides for all our needs. And the third one in green, we need to place God first in how we manage our finances. And when we understand and we live these three principles, we will actually achieve financial freedom. So let's go to the first one. God is the owner. There are several Bible verses that tell us in the Bible, New Testament, Old Testament, that everything belongs to God. For example, Psalms 24, verses 1 and 2. Here we find the world and all that is in it belong to the Lord. The earth and all who live on it are his. He built it on the deep waters beneath the earth and laid its foundations on the ocean in the ocean depths. So, everything belongs to God. Even ourselves, we belong to God. And he says here, because he's the one who built it. He's the one who created everything. Therefore, because he created, he is the owner. So this is the first principle that we need to understand, that God is the owner of everything that I have, even right now, in my pocket, and in my bank account. And I need to be found a faithful manager. I want to share with you a story of a person that I met a few years ago, actually while I was in the Philippines, in the year 2012. As I was studying there at IAS, I heard a talk by this person, Denzil McNeilus. Denzil belongs to a wealthy family in the US. They are a Seventh-day Adventist family. His father founded and owned some years ago a truck company. And Denzil now is the owner of a bank called the Sterling State Bank of Minnesota in the US. But his family is also known for their philanthropic work. They helped around the world to build churches, to build schools, etc., through Maranatha volunteers and through ASI, Adventist Layman Services and Industries. Denzil said in that speech that he gave to students and faculty at IAS that when his father started many years ago the trucking company, they gave tithes and offerings at the end of the year. So one day he asked his father, who owns our company? Because if it is God, then we need to be faithful stewards and we should give tithes and offerings of every single truck that we sell. So they started calculating now the tithe every Friday and returning it every Saturday instead of only once at the end of the day. Denzil said that the result was their sales of trucks in just a short period of time doubled, and then the company doubled the sales again, making them the largest cement mixer truck company in the world, having 75% of the market. As you can see on the screen, these are the types of trucks that they were manufacturing and selling. They were putting together a truck with a mixer of cement, and they actually created this product. Then they started producing garbage trucks, developing a new product, he said, every 30 to 45 days. He said that before launching a new product with a new design, they kneel down with his father and they will pray, Lord, how much do you want us to give in tithes and offerings? Then he shared that when they sold the business, later in their lives, the company was the largest producer of cement mixer trucks in the world and the second largest producer of garbage trucks in the world. He said that not everything was color rose, not everything was perfect, because when they were trying to sell the company, someone published an article against them. He said it was very discouraging, because there are times in your life when you ask yourself, why does this happen to me? But he said, the owner of all things knows the end from the beginning. And 9 years later, they actually were able to sell the company for a price 2.5 times the original price. So they gratitude give to the church a value that was equivalent to the total original sale price. When you receive money, a result of your work, a result of your company, a result of your effort, or when you receive something that is of value, a valuable object, or like a gift, or a return on your investment, do you have a feeling of ownership? Do you feel that it belongs to you, that you can dispose of it, you can use it as you wish?
I don't know why I got started on.
Sometimes I have that feeling. I work so hard, and because I work so hard, everything that is here in my wallet is my salary, is the result of my effort. It belongs to me. But actually, is giving us the skills to work, product. He is the one giving us the life, so we can work and so we can earn money, right? God is owner, therefore, for 2 reasons. One I already shared, because he is the creator. In Psalm 89:11, we find also the heavens are yours. You're also the earth. You founded the world and all that is in it. He is owner because he is creator, but also he's owner because he redeemed us and he redeemed this world. In Isaiah, we find that Jesus Christ, was despised and rejected, but he took up our pain and bore our suffering. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. What a wonderful Savior that we have. And therefore, this Savior and this Creator is our owner. We belong to him, and everything that we have comes from his merciful hands. As owner of everything in the world, God expects faithful administration from his managers. Everything you and I have belongs to God. And you yourself, I myself, we belong to God. Therefore, this is the starting point, the starting principle to understand God's plan for our financial freedom. And this principle is, I repeat, you are not the owner. God is the owner. Let's go to the second principle, which is that God, in his love and mercy, he provides for our needs. This is also across the Bible. I chose the verse from Philippians 4:19 that says that with all his abundant wealth through Jesus Christ, my God will supply all our needs. This is the Apostle Paul writing to his church in the city of Philippi, and he says, my friends, God has the power to supply for some of your needs. He will supply for some of your needs. Is this what he says? No, he says, God, through Jesus Christ, can supply for all your needs. And it's because of Jesus Christ that we have this almighty intercessor, fully God, fully man, interceding on our behalf. So why is it that sometimes we don't receive the promise? Maybe you are saying, okay, Carlos, but I'm lacking money. I cannot reach the end of the month. I cannot provide for my family, for my children. Why is God not fulfilling his promise? I'm even claiming this promise. So I want you to reflect for a few minutes in why it could be possible that I may not be receiving these promises. this particular promise. And I'm going to give you 3 reasons I find in the same context of this promise, in the same book of Philippians chapter 4. The first one is that we may be forgetting to fulfill the condition and the generosity. For example, in Philippians 4:10, we found that these people in that church, they were helping Paul in his ministry and with his personal needs. Then in verse 18, we found that he's saying that God received generosity as a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice, pleasing to God. One condition for God to fulfill his promise to provide all our needs is that we need to be generous. We need to have this attribute of God, that God can only give us, because we are by sinful nature very selfish. But God can change our hearts and make us generous. And when we become generous, then he can give all that we need. The second reason why we may not be receiving is that we may forget to be happy with what we already have. Maybe grumbling and complaining, oh, my friend has more than me. He has more salary, and he has a more beautiful car, and he has a better house than I have, and he has a better cell phone that I have. And we become negative with what we have and unhappy. But how much do you need to be happy? How much did Jesus have to be happy? He didn't have a place to live. He didn't have a pillow in which to rest his head. How much did Paul have to be happy? In verses 12 and 13, we find that he said, I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. So maybe we are not receiving God's supply for all our needs because we have not learned that we can be happy with the little that we have. The little or the much. We need to learn to be happy and thankful to God with what he gives us, whether it's little or much. I want to share with you the brief story of my MD friend, my medical doctor friend in Argentina. I visited him a few years ago. After many years that I didn't see him, he was now a doctor. He was having a good job, a good salary. To pick me up with a very fancy, expensive car. And I said, hey, you are doing very well, my friend. And he said, yes, thank God. And I am progressing. I'm able to buy this beautiful car. And then while I was having lunch with him, I asked him, and what is your next objective? Now you have this very fancy car. What is next? And he said, now I am saving so I can have my own house, because he was still renting. I want to buy my own house with my wife. And I say, okay, that's great. And then what? And he said, you know, there is always something that I see my colleagues in the hospital, that they have this fancy gadget, this fancy thing, this fancy vehicle, and then their fancy vacation. And I say, but my friend, then there is no end to your needs, your wants, your desires to acquire more things. And this could be a reality for us also, that we are never satisfied with what we have, and we all are always looking at others and trying to get what they have, and looking at what I lack. The second condition, I believe, for God to fulfill his promise of supplying all our needs is that we learn to be happy with what we have. And then the third condition is that maybe we may be forgetting that the one who gives, the one who provides, The one who supplies is Jesus Christ himself, the creator and the redeemer of your life, the life of your family, the lives of this world. And he has only one goal for us. And his goal is your personal. If he achieves that, then achieved everything. If we don't get his salvation, then we don't have nothing. And this is what he says, that he will supply everything that my heart lacks to be able to accept his free gift of eternal salvation. Maybe if you love money, he will put you in a purifying situation just in order for you to love him more than you love your money. If you are not generous, he will teach you how to become generous, how to become like him. If you love Jesus, then above all else, and you share it with others with joy, then he will fulfill his promise. He will provide for all that you need. Let me share with you another friend from, he is from Uruguay, where my mother was born and where I lived with my family a few years. His name is Maxi. He owns a business which is a dental technician business. He is himself a dental technician. He builds tooth for dentists, so they can put in your mouth, in my mouth, so we can have beautiful smile. And he says that the purpose of having a company is to fulfill God's plans for him in terms of helping those in need around him. He says, my responsibility as a big owner greater than the responsibilities of my employees. They live on a salary, I live on the profit of the company. This makes me more likely to help others in need than my employees, who had maybe already assigned what they will do with their salaries. And one time I was visiting him in his house, and he told me, you know what's happened? Last month, at the end of May, and at the beginning of June, the amount of people coming to me asking for money was enormous. There were many situations of family who were not able to meet their needs, could not help their families, and I started helping one, and then another one, and then another, and finally I lost count of the money I was giving away to people in need. Every day I had one or two people coming to ask me, so it was terrible. And then and I did not have enough money to pay bi-weekly salary to my employees. He told me we pay salaries on the 15th and on the 31st of every month. So on Monday that week, I started calling my customers who owed me money by phone, and I started to collect. I moved from one town to another in my region, from one city to another, and collected from my customers. And on Tuesday morning, which I thought was 15 of the month, I made my cash count, and I was missing, he says, 9,000 pesos. So I distributed the cash I had among my employees, and I owed them a little bit each, totally 9,000. So this question came to my mind. Have I acted wrong? I understand that the company is here to help, and that to me asking, I need to give them. But on the other hand, I have a responsibility to provide the salaries to my employees. So I was in doubt, he said. It made me quiver in my faith even. But I tried to not give it much importance. Anyway, those doubts went with me. Have I acted right in giving this help to these people? The next day, on Tuesday, at 9:30 in the evening, 9:30 p.m., another client came actually driving from another city, and he called me on the phone to let me know that he sent his wife by car and that she could not find my house. If I could please go outside the house so she could find me. I went out and the lady was ringing the bell in the house next door. She said, take this money my husband sent me to give you this 9,000 pesos. My friend told me, I smiled. And I smiled and I thought, wow, just what I was owing to my employees. So he went to his house and realized, as he looked at his calendar, that that day, Tuesday, was June 14, not June 15, and that he had one more day to pay the salaries. He actually needed to pay the salaries the following day. And then he said, I had been confused. I had anticipated one day in the payment of the salaries, and the Lord used this to fulfill his promise. The promise to supply for all my needs. On the 14th, he had sent me at from another city a woman with the money I needed to pay salaries. Isn't that awesome, he told me. The next day, he says, I went to the company, handed over the money that I was lacking to give to my employees, and I was in peace in my heart because God is in control of everything. The client owed me more money. He could have sent any amount. However, God moved him, although he is not religious, to send me the exact amount I was missing. He was generous, and then at the end he was happy with what he had, and he was able to recognize that it was God the one providing for him. How should knowing that God provides impact our view of the future? Sometimes we become fearful. How am I going to survive? How am I going to provide for my family? How am I going to educate my children? How am I going to provide for a house for my family? But the answer is, when we fulfill God's conditions, to be happy with what we have, to be generous, and to understand that the one who gives is Jesus himself, he will provide. And when we understand that God is going to provide for all our needs, what peace, what joy we can find in our lives. Now we can transition to the last of the three principles of financial freedom. Number one was that God is the owner of everything we have. Number two, that God provides our needs. And the number three is that to place God first in our lives, including how we manage our money. Jesus told his disciples when they were worried about what they were going to wear, what they were going to eat, he said, don't worry. My Father in heaven feeds the little birds. How much more he will not feed you? Look at how he clothes the flowers. Not even King Solomon was clothed so beautifully. He will clothe also you. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all the things will be given to you as well. He didn't say, seek God and God's kingdom in second place on your life, or in third, with your job, with your professional life, with money you can earn, and then worry about the kingdom. No, he didn't say that. He said, seek first. Have as the top priority in your life my kingdom and the righteousness, my righteousness. And then all these other things that worry you will be added to you as well. Why is it that God wants us to put him first in our lives? It is because we cannot serve both God and money. It's in the same chapter. Jesus said, you cannot serve both God and mammon or money. You cannot have both at the top of your ranking of priorities or values. God needs to be first. Our heart was designed to be where our treasure is. Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Because where we put our treasures, we will have our worries. Where we put our treasures, we will focus our thinking. And all this will absorb our time. So we need to put God first in how we manage our family finances also. Have you already put him first in your life? Have you already considered how to put God first in how you manage your family finances? Let me tell you a little bit of my story. When I got married, when I married my wife, it's going to be already now 19 years at the end of December. I had this problem. Both were young professionals working with decent salaries for people who are starting in a profession. Myself and my wife, we both work full time. And at the end of the first year, something struck me. We were not able to save a single dollar. At that time, we were living in Paraguay. We were not able to save a single Guarani, the currency in Paraguay. And I wondered myself, how is it possible that both of us working with decent salaries, we didn't have extravagant expenses, we were not able to save? And this started to worry me a lot, and I started to then to pray and ask God, what's wrong? Why we were not able to save? And actually kneeling on my couch, on my living room, and I believe God answered my question. And the question that came to me, or actually a Bible verse that came to me, is this one here from Malachi chapter 3, verse 8 to 11. Will a mere mortal rob God? Yet you rob me. But you ask, how are we robbing you? In tithes and offerings. You are under a curse, your whole nation, because you are robbing me. And as this Bible verse came to my mind, I knew this Bible verse, and now it came to my mind, I started to tremble. Lord, are you telling me I am robbing you? In tithes and offerings? And then you are under curse, your whole family, because you are robbing me. And I said, God, that cannot be true. The tithe is deducted from my salary. I was working for the church. The tithe was deducted from my salary. It cannot be true. And he continues saying, and actually opened my Bible, and I continue reading in verse 10. He told me, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. And then he told me, test me in this, Carlos, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. I will prevent pests from devouring your crops, and the vines in your fields will not drop their fruit before it is ripe. Then, verse 12, all the nations will call you blessed, for yours will be a delightful land, says the Lord Almighty. And trying to understand this truth that God was using to answer my question of why we were not able to save. And I started to think about how we dealt with our tithe and offerings, and God gave me 3 slaps on my face. Slap number 1. I will use this quotation from Councils of Stewardship to explain what happened. And this quotation says, "We are not left to stumble along in darkness and disobedience. The truth is plainly stated, and it can be clearly understood by all who wish to be honest in the sight of God. A tithe of all our income is the Lord's." And in the Malachi verse, it says, "Bring all your tithes." So I started thinking, is it possible that I am not all my tithe, all the tithe from all my income? And the answer was yes. I was returning tithe only from my salary, from my wife's salary. But there were other sources of income from our family from which we were not returning a faithful tithe. For example, we were receiving some additional benefits from the organization, like, for example, help for transportation, help for some things for our family, and we were not considering those as income. Also, we were receiving in that first year of marriage some gifts from family, from my side, from my wife's side, from friends, and those gifts, I understood these are also need to be tithed. At the end of that first year, to give the tithe from all income. And for that, we needed to be careful to keep record of every single cent that we received, so we could be found faithful tithe returner, faithful stewards in returning to God what belonged to Him, to put God first in our finances. And there is a story in the Bible I will just share briefly so we can leave time for questions and answers. It's the story of the widow. Jesus was with his disciples in front of the temple, and he called his disciples and said, "Truly, I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in what? Everything, all she had to live on." So, Jesus, they do not look at quantity that we return. It's not about how much we give in tithe or offering, but it's rather a matter of proportionality. The others who were coming and giving bigger amounts into the box, offering box, they were giving part of what they had. But this widow, she gave all that she had. If you give to the church in tithe or in offerings $100, but then in your pocket you have $10,000, you have 100 bills of $100, then how much are you giving in proportion to what you have? You're just giving 1%. It's just a little fraction. But if you give to church $1 instead of $101, but in your pocket there is nothing else, in your bank account there is nothing else, you are giving all you have, like the widow. How much are you giving in percentage? You are giving 100%. In Acts of the Apostles, we find that Christ called the attention of the disciples to this woman who had given all her living. He esteemed her gift of more value than the large offerings of those whose alms did not call for self-denial. From their abundance, they had given a small portion. To make her offering, the widow had deprived herself of even the necessities of life, trusting God to supply her needs for the morrow. Of her, the Savior, verily I say unto you, that this poor widow had cast more in than all they which had cast into the treasury. Thus, he taught that the value of the gift is estimated not by the amount, but by the proportion that is given and the motive that actuates the giver. I understood at the end of that first year that I needed to consider my faithfulness to God in both tithes and offerings by proportion. And God says that the tithe is 10%, and it's a proportion. Or the offering he leaves is up to us to give, but it could also be converted into a proportion. And that he also loves when I give with a right motivation, with self-denial and sacrifice, as he sacrificed for me. God does not value my offering by the amount, and I was actually giving every week offerings in the church, but he values my offerings by the proportion and the motive that drives me. So the question I asked myself was, how much am I giving in offerings? What percentage of my income it is? And then what motivation do I have? And I actually made the numbers with my wife, and at that time, the offering we were giving every Sabbath in the church was equivalent to 2.5% of my income, of our family income. So we made a second decision. The offerings were also going to be proportional. This decision number one, return tithe from all our income. Decision number two, offerings were going to be our income, and we increased for the following year from 2.5%, a small increase to 3%. And we started asking God, please God, give us the right motivation to return this tithe and offering that belong to you. And then we have a third discovery, if you wish, instead of slap, that God told us in Malachi chapter 3, test me on this now. So I started asking God, do you really want me to test you? And this answer kept coming to my mind, yes. Test me on this. Bring to me the whole tithe and offerings. Test me, and I will open the windows of heaven. So we made a covenant, a pact with God, with my wife. Number one, we are going to put God manage our family finances. Two, we are going to cry out to the Lord to fulfill his promise of test me and I will pour blessings on you. Number three, we were going to give tithe of all our income, even the gifts that we receive in kind, we are going to give cash out of that for tithes and offerings. And finally, we were going to have the offerings as a percentage of income. For that, we needed to keep a faithful record of our income and our tithes and offering, and we needed to have a very careful budget of everything we received and how we spend in groceries, in transportation, in everything for the house. We needed to keep a faithful budget. And this will be the topic of the third session this afternoon, the first one in the afternoon, how to have in our family a good budget. At the beginning of that year, when we did this covenant with God, we did our budget, what we expected to receive, what we expected to spend, and we had a difference that we were able in paper in the budget to save. At the end of that year, we were able to fulfill that budget of saving. Thank God. And we said, God, you fulfilled your promise. You allowed us to save. Thank you so much. You fulfilled your promise. We were not able to do it last year. This year, with your blessing, we were able to do it. So what was next? We asked God, what should we do now? How can we grow? And we understood that we needed to start now growing in the percentage of offering. So for the third year, the second year of the covenant, we increased our offering from 3% of our income. And then we created also a budget, income, expenses, and then how much we were able to save as difference. What was the result? At the end of that year, number 2 of the covenant with God, we were not able only to save what we budgeted, but we saved 25% more than we had projected. And we said, God, you fulfilled it again. We tested you and you answered. You gave us more than we expected. So we started asking ourselves, what is going on here? Did we have more salary? No. Did we spend less? Maybe yes. And we started to think, maybe our shoes did not wear out so much as we expected. Maybe our clothes we thought we needed to replace, they lasted longer. Maybe the gasoline in our car started to do more kilometers for every liter of gas. Maybe we didn't get sick so much, and we didn't need to spend so much in medicines or going to the doctors as we may have budgeted. All of this was the proof that God fulfilled his promise. He said, your crops will not be damaged by bugs. They will ripe and you will be able to harvest. I will protect you. I will open the windows of heaven. So at the end of that second year, we said, now what's next, Lord? And we understood that we needed to continue growing in the percentage of offerings. We increased from 7 to 5%, then from 7 to 10%, then from 10 to 15, and then from 15 to 20%. And in the year number 8 of this covenant with God, until now, we have kept always 20. And what was the reason? It was amazing. We were not able with 10 plus 2% or to save. And now after all these years of having 10 plus 20%, learning to live with only 70% of our income, God has given us so many blessings. From replacing the car to start buying for a small apartment. And now after 19 years of all these years of pact with God, it's fully paid, that apartment, thank God, and the possibility to provide for first our daughter and then our son, so many gifts that we receive from families and relatives, and the possibility to travel to the Philippines to study on our own, just as self-sponsored students with our family helping us. God has provided so many blessings that I can tell you, I tested God as he tells us in Malachi 3, and he fulfilled his promise of heaven, and he poured down so many blessings on me and my family. How do we put God first in our family finances? I can summarize in this slide. We need to bring a faithful tithe. The tithe is 10%, and we need to be faithful in returning the tithe. First thing that we can do after we receive every salary or every money, and it needs to be of the full amount that we receive. 10% of everything that we receive. Number 2, the offerings could be proportional. God looks at the proportionality and looks at the motivation of our heart. I suggest that you start as we did, small where you are, calculate how much you are giving now in offering, and then make a covenant with God to tell us in his word, and then increase little by little in percentage also of your income until you can reach 10%. My suggestion is that your offerings be after you grow 10%. Motivation of our heart. That you someone has the microphone on, please turn it off so there is no echo. And God doesn't tell us how much we need to give in offering. It's up to us. He says the offerings are free will. You decide how much. It's just a suggestion that we get also from the church. Actually, here in my church, at MAU Church, when you receive your tithe envelope, you will see that there is a suggestion in the back that the offerings could be also a 10% of our income. This shows our generosity and gratitude to God. And they should be regular, systematic, benevolent, and we should return them cheerfully. And then we have the rest of our income. If we 10%, we have 80%. That's the rest. And that's for the well-being of you and your family. And for that, we need to have family goals, to use them as wise as possible. And that will be the topic of the second seminar today. We need to have a good budget. This will be the third seminar today. And we need to use wisely credit and savings. and this will be the topic of our last seminar today. So, in conclusion, we need to understand that God is the owner of everything that we have, that God is willing and able to provide for all our needs, and that He expects us to put Him first in every area of our life, including how we manage our finances. So I just want you to, I want to finish with you on this question, understanding this third principle of financial freedom, God first. What recommendations would you bring to your family? What suggestions would you bring to the table of your family as you discuss your family finances? What changes that is God inspiring you to make in your life? Thank you so much for attending and for listening. Now I am open to questions and answers, Akam.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Carlos. We will now open the floor for the questions, if you have any, on what has been presented. All right, so you can unmute yourself when you want to ask and go ahead and ask the question. All right, Frederick, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good morning and happy preparations day for the Sabbath coming.
Thank you.
And Doctor, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation about how we can receive blessing from God. Now, this is my question. As we workers, sometimes your salary is not up to your expenditure. Yes. So you have tried to, give the 10% to the God as He command us to do it in the tithes returning. And about the offering, free willing offering. Okay, let me say I supposed to give maybe $5, but looking at my expenses and my expenditure that have been drawn already. Okay, let me give God $1. Is it from my heart or because of the hardship that I'm going through? That is why I just give $1 to God. I want you to explain that area for me. I hope you understand my question, Doctor.
Yes, that you don't have enough money to meet all the needs of your family or
Yes.
your needs. Therefore, you decide to give less offerings so you can balance your budget.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's a very interesting question and very important question that many of us are facing. How can I give or how can I keep this level of offerings if my money is not enough? Right? So what I would suggest is that you do a very careful and detailed budget of what you receive, your income, and all your expenses. Because sometimes as we do the budget, we realize that there might be, I'm not saying that's your case, I'm just saying in general, it might be the case that I might be using part of my salary for something that is just to please my own appetite, and maybe that's something that I could live without. Just one example. For example, I might be, I don't know, going to a restaurant once per week, and I don't need. I could be saving money there. Maybe I am, I don't know, being careless in how I do my shopping, my grocery. I don't have a shopping list, and when I go to the supermarket, I buy more things that I actually need. So budget is something very important, and we will discuss this in the third seminar today, how to do a budget, because we might be discovering that we can reduce some of our expenses. Now, and then you can you can give the $5 that you want to give to God as offering. Now, let's assume that you review your budget and you review all your expenses, and you are already at the minimum. You are already at the minimum, and you cannot give more than $1 of offering. That God with the $1? I don't think so, because as we learned today, the principle is that God looks at the proportionality and at the motivation. So I suggest, as I explained with my own personal example, that you convert that $1 or that $5 in your budget as a percentage of your income. Let's give an example, just for the sake of the example. If you receive $100 and you are giving $1, it's therefore 1% of your income. If you receive every week $100 and you give in offering $1, it is therefore 1% of your income. Is it possible that you can increase to 2%, 1.5%, and that you make a covenant with God that you want to be faithful in tithe and offering? And I believe that when you make a pact with God and you are honest that you want to put God first in this area of your life, the family finances, and that you convert your offering not being $1, but rather being 1% of your income, or 1.5, and then you said, for these 6 months, I will increase to 2%. And I want to test you, Lord. You said that if I make it proportional, if I have the right motivation, you will open the windows of heaven. I want to test you. And then after 6 months, tell me what happens. Don't be worried about the amount. Be worried about the proportionality and your and you fulfill what you promised. Any other question?
All right. Frederick, you have one more? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor, once again. Yes, I'm speaking from Kuwait, DIAF SDA Fellowship member.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm so pleased with your explanation. And one more question I want to ask you about this returning of tithe and offering. I'm in Kuwait. My wife is in Ghana. So at the end of the month, when I receive my salary, I send the money to Ghana for my wife to take over, to take care of my kids and everything. So I order her to give the tithe and offering in Ghana. Okay, I want to ask, is it good for me to pay tithe in Kuwait and at the same time pay tithe in Ghana, or I should make it once at all? Because this thing is worrying me so much.
Okay.
I don't know whether I should pay the tithe in Kuwait here at the same time pay in Ghana, or I should pay it once.
That's a good question. So let me just try to understand. You work in Kuwait.
Yes, sir.
Your wife is in Ghana.
Yes, sir.
Is she working?
Yes, she is working.
Okay, so you can actually have a combined budget if you want, or you can have separate budget. How much, of course, you are earning in Kuwait, how much she is earning in Ghana. What is the recommendation of the church is that we return our tithing offerings in the worship, because actually returning the tithe and the offering is an act of worship. It's showing that we belong to God, that's the tithe, and that we are so grateful to God for what He gives us, that those are the offerings. So if we let's say you are going to church every week in Kuwait, if that's the case, but you are not returning tithe and offerings there because it's being returned in Ghana, you are missing the opportunity to worship God through that act of returning your tithe and offering. And that's something that you don't want to miss. Therefore, you can have part of your tithe and part of your offering return in Kuwait, and part of your tithe and part of your offering return in Ghana. So both you and your wife experience this worship experience. As long as it is faithful, complete tithe, and the offering in this seminar, then I believe you can have the full experience of returning to God the tithe and offerings.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Carlos. We have another question here coming from Lena. Can helping family and friends and strangers be considered as a form of offering and service to God? That's the question here. Okay. Can helping families, friends, and strangers be considered as a part of offering?
My answer would be yes and no. And let me explain why yes and why no. Actually, I'm going to expand on this question on the second seminar, setting family goals. And I'm going to with God, the world, or the people who are not my family, and then my family. Why I make this distinction? Because yes, part of my offering, now I'm going to give my personal example. I said I have my tithe and my offerings are 20%. Of that 20%, I actually have half, 10% that I give to the church. And then I break down into different things, church budget, world missions, some of the ministries that need help in the church. I return part of my offerings in the church. And I also reserve another 10% of my offerings to special projects, evangelistic projects, or also to help people in need. And it's always one or two families around us that we try to help regularly from that part of my offering. Therefore, helping friends and strangers, I consider it as part of my offerings. However, if I need to provide for something on my own family, my own circle of my family, I don't consider that an offering because I take from the rest of my budget, from the rest of the 70% for the needs of my family. But if I need to help someone from my extended family, I may consider using part of my offerings that I separated for helping families or people in need. Therefore, that's why I said yes and no. Yes, if it's extended family and strangers. No, if it is my own close circle of my family. I take my budget from in my case, the 70%.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Carlos. Lena, if you want a more explanation on that, don't miss the second part of the seminar because Dr. Carlos is going to be dealing with that in the second part of the seminar as well. We have a few more questions here from Gila. We recognize that God provides everything to us. Is it advisable to venture into investments such as real estate, stocks, mutual funds in order to multiply our income for the future of our family?
Nice question. Thank you so much. That demands a whole separate seminar to explain what are investments and the different levels of risk. I see you know about investment, mutual funds. Actually, I am planning to speak a little bit about it in the last seminar today when we discussed savings and I'm going to link savings to investing, because that's the best way to protect your savings. It's not to keep it, but just to invest in something so it can multiply. But what's the best advisable investment because you want to protect your family? That's I will just answer briefly now. You need to protect the future of your family by investing in the investment that gives you the best balance between the risk and your tolerance to the risk. Some investments are more risky, like stocks and mutual funds. Others are less risky, like real estate, because real estate increases in value in time. But stocks and mutual funds, they are more volatile. They may increase or they may decrease. So my question is, how much risk can you tolerate? How much risk are you willing to take? And therefore, you will decide which type of investment you will have. I suggest that you have a portfolio of investments in which, if you are low risk person, most of your investment should be low risk and just maybe a little bit high risk. But if you are a more risky person and maybe you can risk more because you have other sources to protect your family in the future, then you can have a bigger proportion of your portfolio of high risk and a lower proportion of low risk to preserve your savings. I don't think there is a one clear-cut answer to this question, and I am actually struggling to decide for myself, for my family, how to answer this question. So because I want to protect my family, so far I have only invested in real estate. As I said, God allowed me to have one apartment, and then last year to buy a small piece of land. So these are the only two investments I have right now. I have explored stocks and mutual funds, but for me that's too risky for now. I have not been able to invest in those because it is for the safety of my family is too risky. Maybe in the future it will be a possibility for us, but for now it's out of our risk level.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Carlos. I think that's the answer is a little bit more complicated than a straightforward one. So thank you for that. Gilad,
Yes.
Please continue to attend the seminar. We have the final one at 3:45, credits and savings. I think you'll have more answer in that time. But thank you for asking that question. We have another one here from Bartholomew. When we say financial freedom, what that really meant, or can you explain that term for me? Carlos, please.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I love to think in my relationship with God as moving from slavery to freedom. As I am a slave of sin and God makes me free, in the same way, I want God to help me to transition from being a slave to be free, to be financially free. And this includes not only that I will stop worrying from money, and this is something very hard because money is something so tangible that we can touch and that make us suffer when we lack it. We need to, in my view, I need to stop worrying. I need to start being content with what I have. I need to start placing my finances in the hands of God, following what the biblical principle that I can learn from the scripture, from the spirit of prophecy, implementing that to the best of my ability, and then resting in peace. That God will take care of me. That God will strengthen out my finances. That God will help me to find a better job. That God will help me to have that God will help me to provide for my family. And therefore, I find peace. in this pact, in this agreement with God, that I will test him. I will be faithful to him as he asked me. And he said, I'm not asking you to be faithful. I'm asking you to be faithful and to test me. That when you are faithful, I will take care of you. And that brings freedom. That brings peace. I am no longer a slave of money, of mammon, but I am free to enjoy God's blessings.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we'll close the seminar with that comment. The next seminar will begin at 10:45. So you don't have to leave. Sign out from here. You can go take some break, drink water, walk around, and come back 10:45. We will begin our next seminar. All right. Thank you very much. When you do come back, please continue to have your mic muted, and we will start 10:45. Now is in my watch 10:28, so you have 17 minutes break time. Thank you, Dr. Carlos. We will come back and meet again.
Welcome.
The next, and the topic, the title for the next part is how to determine family financial goals. That's the topic where Dr. Carlos will be presenting. Thank you very much. We'll see you again 10:45.